5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is OffPlanet Radio.
Welcome to OffPlanet Radio Report. I'm Randy Maugans, and here with me is Chris Hawley.
Hello, Randy. Very nice to be talking with you tonight.
It is, Chris, and of course I'm here in southern central Pennsylvania, and you are on Long Island, and the weather on the East Coast this evening is exceptionally crappy. It is like the winter that will not quit. We got snow here this afternoon.
And you sent it to my house because it's starting here now, and they tell me, oh, no more than 3 or 6 inches here. What are they talking about? We're almost in April. You know, when is it going to stop? I'm at the point I can't take it any longer.
No, people, generally talking to people around here, people who have even been alive and on the planet for 50 or 60 years are saying they don't remember a winter quite like this, and I have a number of theories about it, not the least of which has something to do with what we're going to talk about in your segment tonight, and that is the aerosoling, or what we commonly call chemtrails.
Absolutely. In fact, the reason that I wanted to do this show is just so everyone that's listening can understand when it comes to things unknown or paranormal or just strictly strange. I like to always discuss it with Randy because he will either change my mind, give me something else to think about, or agree with me, oh, this is very odd. So when something strange happens, I usually like to tell him, first, before I get too involved with it, to keep me sort of on the straight and narrow, if you can, in the unknown. Mm-hmm. But, and to talk to someone that I trust his insights. And I haven't even told him what I'm about to talk about tonight. He knows that it has to do with the chemtrails situation. But, Randy, can I launch right into why I wanted to talk to you tonight?
Absolutely.
Which is, this past Saturday was one of the only times on Long Island that we had a beautiful day. It was normal in temperature, and everybody in the world was outside. We've been locked up like living in Alaska for this winter. As you were saying, it's the worst one. I've lived here for over 60 years. Don't remember ever having a winter like this where the very ground felt like solid, deep, solid ice. It was just a whole different feel to the entire environment. Well, anyway, Saturday, it was beautiful. So we were outside and we were running errands and we were out in our car all day. And we even set up some of the things on our deck because we're determined that we're going to have spring. Like it or not, we're going to do this.
No, you got to break it out at some point. You just got to go forward.
We're going to just go for it. And if I'm sitting out there in the snow, so be it. I'm going to grill anyway. So we were busy and we went out and left my house and we're in town. And when we came back, we drove up my driveway. And because the leaves are still off of the trees, because I live in a country setting, we had a beautiful, beautiful view of the gorgeous blue, clear sky. And I looked up, and there it was, a big, beautiful white jet spraying the biggest chemtrail. It was really wide. It wasn't the typical thin one. This big, wide plume of white, whatever it is they're spraying coming out of the back of it. And it was across the entire skyline. So it was very, very long, and it was covering many, many miles. I said to my husband, look at that. It was just incredible because it was against this beautiful, blue sky. And I said to him, oh, we have to film that. Could you run in and get your, his cell phone or his camera? So he said, yeah, I'll be right back. And he ran in the house and he came out, and I never took my eyes off of it. And he stood and looked at it for a few seconds before he ran in to get his camera. He ran into our house and back out. It couldn't have been more than 30 seconds. And we both looked up, and poof, the plane disappeared right in front of our eyes. And we looked at each other, and we looked up again, and we started searching the sky. The plane was gone. And then to our amazement, this huge, long chemtrail immediately started to change form and sort of like fall apart, like drift apart into many parts, and rather than stay the long cloud that it usually does. And it was gone. We did not have time to set up, to film it, to do anything except look at each other. He said to me, what was that all about? He said, where'd the plane go? What happened? I never experienced that before. That plane simply disappeared, and it was perfectly blue and clear. I was looking at it, and God is my witness, I could not even blink. It was gone. I had my eyeball on it 1 second, and then it was just not there. I don't know what to make of that. I've never seen that before. I've been watching and filming chemtrails for many, many years, and the planes, but this was different, and this really frightened me. I then went in the house and started doing searches on the internet, because I haven't been searching this as I once did, which was to be like every day, and started looking at the YouTubes and what people were writing, and found different sites on Facebook and on blog sites that people are talking about this. And I find that the chemtrail issue is alive and kicking and bigger than ever, with incredible documented videos and photographs of things in the sky that are just, in my opinion, terrifying. And many stories about people watching it, just as I did, and it disappears right in front of their face. The planes are gone. Now, of course, my husband said they cloaked it. He cloaked it. He said it was almost like they heard us getting ready to video them, and they cloaked themselves. He said that's the only answer I can come up with why we saw it and then it was not there. A plane just doesn't disappear. We would see it becoming smaller and leaving or change in altitude. It just was gone. So, Randy, I ask you, what's going on out there, and why aren't we all in an uproar over this? This, to me, is so frightening and so terrifying, yet no one even seems to notice, much less care. How do you explain that? And that's not to mention bringing in the whole HAARP machine issue into this matter that may be involved very heavily with all this spraying. If our skies and our weather and our everything is being manipulated to this extent, how can we be so blasé and nonchalant about it?
I think your husband's idea that there was cloaking involved is extremely interesting, given that he is not a real woo-woo guy. It's very interesting that he would bring that up, because one of the aspects of chemtrails has to do with the metallic particles that are suspended in themselves. When you break down the chemical components that have been sampled by independent testers for chemtrails, I guess maybe there's about 35 constituent parts depending on different spray samples. But there are metal particulates in the chemtrails themselves, as well as fibrous material that's also very optically interesting stuff because it appears as a liquid phosphorescent strand that eventually just kind of dissolves. So when we start looking at things like the ridiculous notion that these aircraft could cloak themselves, I think this is part of the makeup itself of the chemtrails, because the metal particles that are spinning and suspended in the substance itself may in fact be a means by which these aircraft are actually able in some way to cloak themselves.
Well, apparently they're able to do something, and he is not. My husband is not like a as you put it, woo-woo person. He's not particularly interested in the unknown like I am. He is aware of the fact that much of this is science we do not understand, and he is ex-military, and he does not easily get flustered. But that, like, I could tell, that really threw him. We were looking at it, and it was gone. And the sky was so blue that there was no extra cloud cover or even fog or anything that you could mist, nothing that you could say was added into the scenario of this thing. The question then, of course, Randy, is why are they cloaking themselves? They haven't until now. And the only thing I can come up with is, due to the internet and some very good people that have gone after this, there is a lot of play out there about this situation and a lot of chatter and a lot of videos and photographs. Could it be that we were getting too close to demanding answers and they decided to take a different tactic and quickly learned how to cloak their behavior? Or is it something completely I cannot think of?
Well, I think the idea, first off, it appears as though they have changed their methodology of doing the chemtrailing. Up to about 2 years ago, my common observation, and I was photographing and videoing this as well, was that you would generally find 2 or 3 aircraft in the sky, and they were generally flying a vector, usually against prevailing headwinds in the upper atmosphere. And I tested this because you can get reports every day of wind currents. And so observing them and then checking the wind currents was a good way to find out what they were doing. They were basically running a vector, triangulated, and in a lot of cases, they were geometric, pyramidal type patterns. They were very clearly crisscrossing. The only reasons I could ever surmise that they would be doing that was that they were effectively seeding right into the atmosphere with the idea that the material itself would be carried with the prevailing winds across a very wide area, which in fact is generally what they do. In the summer of 2007, I traveled extensively. I was actually in about 5 different states that summer, including Tennessee, Oregon, Virginia, and Georgia. And I observed chemtrails in all of those states at different times. I observed chemtrailing over the beautiful, pristine mountains of southern Oregon, a place so far hidden you would almost consider the jets wouldn't even fly over this region. And so at that time, that's what we were observing. Now we're starting to see more single plane activity, or at least we think they're single planes. And it appears as though they're not doing the old triangulation. It looks like they're just blowing it out the back now.
Yes, exactly so. And it's very interesting. I caught a video on YouTube. In fact, I'm going to put it up when we put up our show, I'll add it on my site as well. People can go look at it, of a gentleman, and to tell you the truth, this is terrible, but I don't remember where he's located. However, he's been watching and filming the chemtrail activity for a very long time. It's very upsetting to this man. And he said that he started to try to make a diary to make some kind of sense out of like when they're doing this or why they're doing this. And he came up with one theory that he even claims to be confused about. He doesn't know why this is taking place, but he did notice that the chemtrail activity in his area would increase heavily about 2 weeks before a full moon. And then right after the full moon, I think he said for about a week. I may be wrong about that. And then it would drastically drop off. And then he would find when the next full moon was about to come, 2 weeks before, there would be an enormous amount of spraying again, followed by, the week after, and it would drop off. And he followed this for a while, and the same thing happened over and over and over. His conclusion was he can't figure out why. That would be a pattern, and maybe it isn't. But what he did discover is there did seem to be a pattern to this madness. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
That's not a pattern that I've really noted. I never actually considered looking at that. That's very interesting. One of the things that we need to recognize about this and any other black operation, and this is clearly a black operation being carried out by our government, and some of it's being done through subcontractors. These are not all military planes. There's commercial planes as well. Any kind of project like this extensive, this well-funded, and this well-manned, has multiple agendas at any given time. Whatever the science is behind it, they're serving a number of purposes, and all theories are on the table as to what they really are, since our government will not acknowledge, much less disclose information about it. But one of the projected outcomes of this has to do with basically sky dimming. And we can only speculate. And honestly, anybody that hears this and has more or better information, if you have differences of opinions with what we're putting out, great, because this is a conversation we need to start having across the internet. But the idea that their solar dimming could be any number of things, including attempting to mask extraterrestrial traffic on the upper atmosphere, masking anomalous planetary events or events on the moon. Now, there's a lot of speculation about what's really on the moon, and the fact that we don't really have a clear vision of the sky anymore at night. Dimming over major cities has obviously been done to a tremendous degree, and of course we have the whole problem of light pollution coming from the cities. But even in places where you normally are able to get a pretty open shot of the sky, it's not what it used to be. Those of us who are old enough now to have lived on this earth 50 years or more know that the sky is not as clear as it used to be. It's not as blue as it once was, and that there's something really wrong with the sun. So all of these kind of play into what I would call a multifaceted agenda that's woven into this whole thing.
Absolutely. I agree with every single word you said. And I think it's very, very serious. The thing that bothers me, I think the most about this whole thing, obviously, you're correct when you say this is a massive undertaking. It goes on just about every continent on this planet. Every country in the world, they are spraying, they have been sprayed, they have videos coming out by the people that live there. It is going on all over the world. Anything that takes place all over this world, to this extent, with that much chemicals alone needed, and airtime, and aircrafts, and pilots, this is a massive, massive undertaking, like nothing else I think I can think of in my lifetime that I've ever seen. So this is a serious big, big issue. Now, with that said, I cannot understand how society, the public, does not acknowledge it. I watch people. I go out and I don't use my cell phone very often. And if I go out with my family or my husband, they have theirs. I don't even carry mine. I don't bother with it. I don't want to be connected to it. I'm not a big techie person. I don't tweet. Reluctantly, I'm on Facebook.
Good for you.
And it's just, I won't text. I just won't do it. And I'm connected enough to the computer when I'm writing or searching or researching or interviewing or working with you. That's enough for me. But when I go out, I watch the people. And years ago, I just used to write short stories about anything, people. And I would observe them. I would go out and watch people, and I would find, these amazing little stories, short stories that I used to write and sell at the time. And then I stopped doing it, but I never stopped watching the people. And if you go out and you leave your handheld gadget home and you just sit and watch what's going on around you, you're going to be startled. People do not look at each other. They are rather rude to each other. They don't even pay attention to the people that they're with or their families or friends. They are all connected to some type of gadget that has their full attention, and they are addicted to it. They are oblivious to their surroundings, and they never look up. Now, that alone is dangerous. It's not good. It's removing your humanity, and you're becoming robotic-like, and you're becoming controlled by those very actions. You should not be addicted to a control agent that you hold in your hand that becomes more important than your family, your friends, or your surroundings, however that is the case. And in the meantime, over their heads are these displays being sprayed of things that they have no idea what it is. And let's face it, people, whatever goes up, guess what? It comes down. So eventually they're going to be breathing it, and it's going to be all over them and their clothes and their cars and brought into their houses and their food and everything else. Yet they don't notice it. Now that to me is frightening. It also shows me that they live in a bubble that's been developed by this technology, where they're enclosed in this little self bubble, that the only thing that's in there is them and their tweet. And that's how they go about dealing with life. Everything outside that to them does not exist. And that is what's making it possible for so much of this absolutely crazy, strange behavior over our heads to take place without anyone saying, hey, what the hell is that? We all got to get together and find out. This is not good. That's not happening. And that to me is a whole nother issue, but exactly the same issue, because that's how whatever is going on is allowed to go on. So it seems like we've been hypnotized, brainwashed, shoved in our little singular bubbles, and led around by our noses while they dose us with whatever it is that they need to dose up there for whatever reason, and nobody cares. I feel like I was taken off the planet Earth that I grew up with and learned to love and enjoy, and plopped down in the last 20 years in another planet, in another universe, because I don't understand this one.
One of the things that you just kind of doglegged onto, and it's a whole subject in itself, has to do with the fact that I think the chemtrails are part of another art completely, which is basically human terraforming, or what we call transhumanism. As we begin to inject these substances into our body, I have no reason to believe, and many other theorists out there have discussed the fact that the likely presence of what are called nanobots in the aerosoling have worked their way into our bodies in ways we don't completely understand. The human race is being transformed. It is being transfigured, and it is not human the way we've understood it. And so you have this gigantic electrosphere around us full of microwave towers. I mean, the pollution in any metropolitan area is enough to just sometimes almost knock you off your feet. I'm very sensitive to it. And so we now walk around with electronic devices that are really tracking devices anyway, just like you would put tracking devices on wildlife. And they've enslaved us with these attention-grabbing devices like Twitter and Facebook and texting, which are just consuming our visual space. We no longer have the visual space that we once did. We would not survive in a world that is not what we now recognize as quote, civilized. Because our range of view is so limited at this point. We're not... I watch people too, and I always have, Chris. Part of me walking around is keeping a very wide scope of vision. I don't walk around looking at my phone. I don't drive in a way that I'm being diverted to attention-wise. But as human beings, our visual space has now decreased from a field that at one time extended to the very side of our eye space in a sweep and moving out in a field of at least 100 to 200, 300 yards. Human beings can't see 5 feet in front of them anymore. So we are being changed. We are being transformed. And I think chemically and electronically there is something in the atmosphere that's being sown by these chemtrails that's contributing to this as well.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And you're truly telling the people the truth when they don't pay attention, or do they see, nor do they care about anything that isn't directly in front of them, much less. I grew up in the country. I know you live out in the country a little bit. You have to be aware of your surroundings if you're going to survive.
Absolutely.
And you have to know the sounds, the smells, every single thing that is normal to that area so that you can distinguish when there's something that is not supposed to be there so that you can protect yourself and do what you need to do. That is totally foreign to, I would say, the young people today, no matter where they live. They are being totally controlled by all of these things, and I do believe that what they're spraying is connected to it. I also want to say, and a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to hear this. This doesn't interest me and I don't believe you. And that's fine. You don't have to believe me and you don't have to care about it, but I want to say it anyway, is that I have interviewed many people that had contact or abduction experiences in their lifetimes that have noted that they've been becoming very ill during times of, and there's two things they blame for it, heavy chemtrailing and heart machine usage, where they believe the heart machines are at play, manipulating the weather. And come on, people, I also did a search on that. The heart machines are all over the world. They're using them. They're manipulating our weather. Possibly we're in this tremendous Cold War of weather manipulation that no one knows except the powers that be that are using it to try to control or destroy different areas of the world. Because let's face it, he who controls the weather controls the world. And we all started to notice that it would bother us. So what I did was I made this little email thing up that each of them would individually email me when they were having a bad day to see if there was any type of connection. And lo and behold, we found that during storms that did not feel natural to us or heavy chemtrailing and times where they all felt the heart machine was being put in play, they all became sick on the same day. They all felt terrible. There were a few of the abductees that became very, very ill at the same exact hour on certain days and recovered exactly on the same day and time a week or so later. They feel that was in a direct connection to a HAARP machine being used. And it became clear to us as a group that, yes, this is really affecting the human race, and maybe us more in particular because we've been, what's the word, altered or, manipulated in the first place, that we are maybe not as strong or, able to fend off a lot of this as other people. But there was a definite connection. So, knowing all these things, it's time, people, that we all step back, stand up straight, start looking around and deciding, do you really want to be used, abused, manipulated, and played with like this? And I understand it may be, as what Randy said, something so severe and serious that they can't just come out and tell us. But you know what, Randy? They could break it to us a little at a time, that it's a needed thing to be done, and I don't care, lie about something, but at least admit to us that it's a needed resource to keep us alive and not terrorize us with the method that they are using to do it.
I will just point out, I see no possible benevolent use of this technology given what's inside of the substances itself. I also believe that there would be a huge liability leaking this information out about the chemtrails, given the various diseases that are now manifesting in the population that probably could be linked back to a full disclosure. One of the things that you're seeing now is just, it's off the scale, is dementia. We are now living in a culture where dementia is becoming statistically as significant as cancer and heart disease and mortality rates. And this is new. This is new within 2 decades. And I can't help but think that given the chemical makeup of the chemtrails, that a lot of what we're seeing is a result of the chemtrails themselves and what's been sprayed into the atmosphere. So they have a problem. They have a liability in any type of disclosure that comes out. It is not even on the table for conversation. UFOs and ET presence on planet Earth are an open book compared to chemtrails. Nobody is talking about this.
Well, why?
Well, again, whatever you think about ET abductions or contact or any of that stuff, it's out there. It's something else. It's very clear. Our government controls the airspace. Our government has the ability to monitor every single thing that moves through the sky, which, we won't even talk about the Malaysian airliner disappearance, but let's just say that it's hard to believe anything really goes missing in the world where satellites track everything. Yet nobody will comment. The FAA will not comment. FOIA requests go ignored by people who are researching the planes in the skies. It is treated as if it doesn't even exist. And the reason they're able to get away with it is because the average person doesn't observe it, therefore it doesn't exist. People don't look up at the sky anymore. They don't remember what the sky used to look like, and even when they see something that's anomalous, they're not trained and educated enough to be able to recognize the difference between a normal contrail, which is vapor coming out of the back of a plane, and the aerosoling, which is a very different substance and character in terms of how it disperses into the atmosphere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what strikes me funny is if you think that that's a contrail and you go out and look at the patterns that are laid down, if you think that that's normal air traffic and that the airlines and planes and jets and whatever else is up there flying around would actually be a safe way to travel with looking at the crisscross patterns and just total, mess of the sky that's left by these chemtrails, you're fooling yourself. Those are not the lines of commercial traffic that you see. I live by enormous airports. I live in New York. I know what the planes travel in. And you see them all day long, the normal traffic. But then they don't think to say, look, I'm sitting here at the beach. I see the normal commercial traffic coming in over the Atlantic. And then right above it, or sometimes below it, these enormous chemtrails being blown out. Why aren't they all doing that if it's contrails? There's no sense to this. You can't make it logical no matter how you try to twist and turn it to please yourself. There's only one answer. Something odd's going on, people. Very odd, probably dangerous, and it's going to affect you, your children, your family, your life, your planet, your sky. When are you going to decide to look up and start questioning and doing something about it? Because Randy and I and the handful of other people that are out there trying so desperately to shake you awake cannot do it alone. You have to start to partake in your own destiny. And that is the thing that I've just about given up hope in trying to do. All I ask is you look up, turn off your gadgets, pay attention to what's going on around you. And every day for 2 months, look up at the sky and then tell us if we're crazy or not. Because I think what you see is going to be quite startling. Don't you agree?
I agree. It's time to wake up, open your eyes, look to the skies, educate yourself. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of YouTube videos out there and thousands of websites that have detailed this. One of the things that we want to do is we want to bring some people on here in the near future who are experts in these fields to talk about them. And I've got a short list of people I want to bring on. And again, the agenda and scope of what we do is huge, but I'm thinking this is a time to really kind of dig into this, Chris.
Well, I'm terrified at this point and don't know what to do anymore, Randy. I'm going to write about it again. We'll put this out again. We'll try to talk to other people. But, short of walking around and grabbing people's handheld gadgets and throwing them on the sidewalk and say, look up, I don't know what to do. And that would probably get me arrested.
Well, again, a lot of this goes into mind control and control of populations. And most people who are now in their prime adult years, that being, people 40 and under, have been socially conditioned in a very different way than I think our generation was, Chris.
Yes.
That despite the fact that we've seen the atrocities of what our governments and our corporations can do, we really don't challenge and we don't question. And maybe it's time to be proactive. Maybe it's time to begin calling the FAA, begin filing FOIA requests for air traffic over metropolitan areas, begin getting pictures. Everybody's got cameras now. And I videoed these things on what at the time was a standard definition video camera about 5 years ago for a summer. I took still pictures, I took videos. And I educated myself in it by observing both contrail and chemtrails and how they acted, how they interacted with the atmosphere. There's only certain conditions under which you can have contrails, by the way. And
right.
Chemtrails, on the other hand, are not reliant on the conditions of air and things like that. They simply suspend them there, but they do, in a timely way, seem to disperse these, usually with favorable winds. You won't see them out in real high winds because the dispersion rate's too slow to be effective. So I'm of the opinion that whatever they're doing with this, it is intended as basically a form of weaponized. This is war against our bodies, our minds, and everybody on the planet right now, because it's global, and we have to view it as a war and we have to wage it as a war.
Absolutely. And we need answers. And if you don't want to get involved or you don't have time or I'm too busy in the day, I'll tell you what. Write a 2-paragraph little note and send it to your elected officials in your area and say, what the hell is this that you're spraying all over our heads and our houses and our children's heads? What's going on out there? And if they start getting thousands and thousands and thousands of little notes like that, they're going to have to answer you. They're going to have to address it. But you know what they say? The worst thing that can happen is when good men and good women do nothing when they see evil or things that need to be answered. So do not be one of those that do nothing. You know, do something, because this is ridiculous.
Well, I'll go a step further. I'll say this, and this will really piss some people off. If you're ignoring the evil around you, you're not a good person. You are a conspirator with the very people who are harming both you and your children and the generations that are supposed to inherit this earth.
Yeah, and I would think a coward, because only a coward lays down and takes a beating and doesn't fight back.
So, we want to flip over here for a little bit here in the topics that we're discussing. Again, this is OffPlanet Radio Report, and we're going to kind of do these on a regular basis. I'm not promising weekly, but when Chris and I have things we want to talk about or we have an interesting guest, we're just going to drop in a show and do it. And I wanted to talk a little bit, Chris, about why we do the paranormal. Now, you and I have both been down this trail most of our lives, being experiencers and being people who have observed what we broadly call paranormal. And I place UFOs and ETs squarely into that just simply because it's a classification, although I think the term paranormal itself is really kind of tarnished at this point.
Yes. It does mean, that science does not yet know paranormal, that we do not yet understand, but it's not used. It's used. They've classified it and try to keep it with certain areas of the unknown and take out UFOs or ETs or things like that. I think if it's unknown, we don't understand it, it's unexplained, it's paranormal. But that's just me. I know that's not the typical usage.
That's actually the classic definition that's in the dictionary as well. It says beyond the scope of normal scientific understanding.
Right.
So why do we do this? I mean, is it like we have this fascination with the woo-woo? Are we intrigued by it? I ask myself questions about why I do what I do. And I mean, some of this, the work that Chris and I do, is difficult. It's difficult personally because we're kind of putting a part of ourselves out there. You kind of tag yourself when you talk about these subjects, and it can alienate people. It can draw people. But one of the things that I've questioned is this useful? Is it useful for us to talk about it, to research it, to explore it and report on it? Is it a space that we should occupy because there is something positive to come out of it? Because it's not all ghost stories and ET abductions. When I think about the paranormal, I think about the abilities that people can develop. And pretty much anybody that's had paranormal experiences will also tell you that in some way they've come in touch with their own abilities, their own senses beyond the 5 physical senses. And Chris, can you share a little bit maybe of your own sense of being somewhat more attuned to your other senses?
Yeah, I do. I do have tremendous, I call it intuition, although I have had moments where I just knew people's names and when they were going to come to me and meet them and things like that were just bizarre. But to me, it was perfectly normal. It was just my gift. And I also think that maybe it is those of us that are born with this more developed extra sense or ability, and some of them are different than others. They're not all the same in each person, but they are also the ones that are open to or sought out for paranormal or unknown experiences. And maybe it is that we are tagged by having those abilities to being the people that are more able to handle or get into, by that I mean to see, feel, and experience the unknown more than someone that's completely closed down and undeveloped in that area. So I think there's a double sword there to it. Part of it is that we were probably born with the ability to deal with the unknown, and the unknown knows we are the ones that are born to deal with it, and we find each other. That doesn't always work out for you when you really maybe don't want that in your life, which was my case. I didn't want to be this way, and I can't stop it. So then I learned to deal with it and control it and try to find answers to it. I also made damn sure I had a real life, a regular, normal, healthy, real life, besides this unknown strangeness that followed me throughout my life. It's part of my life, but it does not define me. I also am a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, all of those things on top of being one that had to deal with the unknown. I think that's the case with many people like us. And unfortunately, I think there's people that, strangely enough, are jealous of that and try to make believe that they are people like us and make up stuff. And that to me is very sad, because a lot of what people like Randy and I and the people I've written about have endured, lived through, and survived in our lifetime was by no means good or healthy or kind to us. We survived it regardless, and I don't think that's something that you want to wish upon yourself. It's, that's my feeling.
Yeah, and the other side of that is everybody's different. Everybody's gifted. I happen to believe that humans are innately, in some way, spiritually gifted individually. We don't all, as you pointed out, have the same gifts, but we all have something inside of us that can be initiated. I'll use that term. Yeah. And some of it comes from ET contact. Some of it comes from exposure to the paranormal. And it becomes a chicken and egg thing, because it's really a question of, is it because you were opened up to that, or were you opened up to it? Or was the opening up of these things part of the experience in order to survive? And the more I've thought about this, and the more I've thought about the history of humanity, I'm not an evolutionist in a strict sense, but it's pretty clear that humans came from something in other forms than what we are now, what you call Homo erectus. How did we survive? I mean, we were on a planet populated by animals, beasts who basically have the ability to run, to bite, to claw, to be able to climb trees very quickly. We were not, in terms of predisposition to survival, the number one choice for survival. How did we survive? And as you go through, threading through the history of humanity, I can't help but think that one of the reasons we survived was because, first off, we're spiritual beings and we're spiritually conscious, and the fact that that consciousness brings with it other things outside the five senses. Survival skills. Well, what are survival skills? Being able to see the extraordinary, to be able to respond quickly, to be able to detect things around you that may not be visible, or to be able to see a few minutes into the future. All of these things are spiritual gifts that we would have had in order to survive our early emergence as a race on this planet. That's just a wild out there theory. But then you look at how all of this has been suppressed. All the major religions of the world have basically suppressed the history of the founders of those faiths, whether it was Buddha or Krishna or Jesus or whoever. They all had awakening experiences with extraordinary gifts. I mean, however you view whatever religion you observe, your original person who founded that faith was a mystic on one level. They were a person who was able to do extraordinary things. Religions have taken all of that, thrown it out the window, and I'll pick on Christianity because I'm comfortable with that. They've completely thrown out the miracles. They've thrown out the fact that all of the saints had awakening experiences where they had incredible abilities to heal, incredible abilities for clairvoyance, clairaudience. Where did we, as a race, come off just throwing all of this to the wayside? Well, we were conditioned, just like we've been conditioned to ignore what goes on around us now in terms of our environment. We've been turned off in terms of our abilities, and these abilities are not of themselves good or bad, but they are something that I think are going to become increasingly important for the relatively few people on this planet who do actually want to survive what's coming.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, Randy. I can't find any fault or don't even know what to add except that I agree completely. The only thing I might add is the people that are like you and I and many others like us may have been born like this because we are a step in evolution, and that's why we are open and sense and see and have experienced the things we have more readily than other people who, if they completely shut down to it, they may not, ever notice that ray of light's there and then become transfixed or overtaken by it. I'm just saying a simple thing like that, or notice a ghostly figure standing in the corner. It would never come into their vision, and they would not be able to make contact with it. So we are people that are open to these things and allow it to come in, even right through to the Bigfoot experience and Mike Woolley and what he described to us. Mike was very open to his surroundings and the sounds, smells, and everything around it. He was open and in tune with it, and he had a remarkable experience because of that. The same thing is with the paranormal. Now, as far as advancing, there are going to be more people than not that will never understand what we're talking about, stay very locked in a very tight little bubble of denial and delusion and actually fear, that do not want any of this that we're talking about near them because it terrifies them. And that I understand. I think that's more the norm than not. And I realize that you have to be a special breed to open yourself up to some of this stuff. I know it for myself. You have to be able to deal with and focus in terrible times of fear, and you have to be brave. Really, really brave. And then to become people like you and I that go out there and try to plate this up as something that people might want to consider digesting, people don't think of that. It takes a lot of guts because we get ridiculed and humiliated and insulted. I just tried recently to go into some kind of little forum thing where I was requested as a guest to go in and talk to contactees. Mm-hmm. And before I went any further, I went in and looked at the forum because after doing this for many years, you learn. Yes. You don't jump before you take a look to see if there's a bottom to where you're going, and you don't just leap. And I found that I was being attacked in a savage manner by the very people that wanted me to come and talk with them. Yeah. And I was insulted, and it was just terrible. And so were you. just because you were my partner.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the attacks can be very real and very present. I was basically lured into a place back in 2011. I traveled a great distance to be there, and it was a very strange situation over a number of days. And the people who were, I think, I will just call them hunters. I think they were very shocked at what they found out. And look, I'm not going at this with pride at all. If you go seeking the strange and unusual, and you attempt to trap that, it'll blow back in your face. And that's what happened in this case. A lot of people were very freaked out by what happened. I didn't consciously do it. I was a catalyst for what happened. And it split apart a group of people who were attempting to work together as a result of it. And, some of those people may hear this show. They know who they are and they know what happened. I just actually a few weeks ago spoke with one of the people that was there just to confirm what happened, because my memory was starting to get dim on this, and they confirmed, no, it was really a weird weekend. Things happened that weekend that were just out of scale. So none of this said with pride. Hold on, I got a plane coming over again. It's, flight's coming in. But none of this is done with pride. I'm not prideful or boastful. And, it's a lot of it is you can't switch on and off. It's not like you have control over it. It jumps in and out. There are times when I have very high cognitive levels in terms of what people think, their emotions, especially because I'm empathic. And it's painful. It's brutal. And as a young person, I wanted to shut this off. I prayed for this thing to just go away because it was painful for me to be in crowds. The radiation that comes off of people when you're sensitive to people telepathically is very powerful.
Yeah, overwhelming and noisy.
Very noisy. It'll drive you insane if you don't learn how to manage it.
But again, Randy, I, over the years, learned, and my tuition told me to go in and look at these people before I said a word. And I did, and I saw them attacking not only me, but you, and I blew up at them, and I said, how dare you? I'm trying to come and help you people. And you spit in my face and said terrible things. They had black hearts and black souls. And I walked out and will never have anything to do with them again and never bother with them. And if I'm ever asked about them, I don't have a kind word about them to say. So that's what they got out of their, little, I don't know why they did it. I do. People that make believe there's something that they're not, do not want people who understand the subject matter to come in and maybe show them for what they are. So the best thing was to attack at me first. So, that's what happened. I've walked that way many times before, but it gives me more strength. I am stronger than that. I will not back down to that. I have looked at the unknown, the cold, dead eyes of the unknown in the face and lived. What do you think, little human, you can do to shake me? It won't happen. So, you get enormous courage and strength when you live a life like you and I have lived. And if I can help, and I know I have, because I've spoken to many people, I've gotten letters and emails and phone calls from people, I have helped many people go through an event that otherwise may have devastated them because they knew they weren't the only ones, that there were other people seeing, feeling, and going through the same thing. And, if I help 3 people, I can deal with 5 little nasty snakes easily. So, there's a lot to being dropped into this. And all I can say is I know it wasn't my plan for life. It wasn't yours. But here we sit. So, I'm trying to make the best of it. That's all you can do.
Well, You know, we do our small part to contribute to the knowledge base out there and to encourage people who have had experiences that they're not alone. And also, you know, I want people to think about who you are as a human being on this planet. Examine your humanity, and then examine a little deeper, and don't be afraid of the spiritual side of this, because in the days to come, as things are ramping up and things are getting flipping really weird on this planet, you're going to need the things that are inside you. And so you need to begin to discover your strengths, find out what your weaknesses are too, because you need to deal with those. But we need to get bolder, we need to get wiser, we need to build up these things that are inside of us that I believe are part of the survival mechanism. And we need to also steel ourselves against the ravening wolves out there who want to attack and destroy anybody who is a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got news for them. The little different ones are the ones they're going to end up probably populating this earth, because we have more control of the whole spiritual sense of what we are about. And that's the whole growth.
Anything else we wanna rake around here in the last few minutes, Chris?
Well, just that I'm going to be bothering you again soon to do a show with our friend Ken Pfeiffer soon, I hope, and talk about things that are flying around, because lo and behold, here we are. We're not even in spring. I'm still having snowstorms, but people are starting to seeing orbs again. And I guess I'm one of the few people that write about orbs, because they all tell me. And I'm getting, again, a few a week of people saying, oh my gosh, I was driving along the highway, and I looked out over the ocean, because I'm on an island here. It's all we see is water. And a huge orb, came out from the ocean and flew over our heads and frightened us to death. They're seeing them again in all different sizes, and I will write about them, and we have to discuss it, because they're not going away.
No, actually, I had 3 of them at one viewing last weekend. It
really?
Was very, very brief. Probably in the range of about 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and they were gone.
What? How big? And
I would estimate, given their altitude, that they must have been at least 20 to 30 feet each.
And in formation?
They were not in a tight formation, but they were staggered behind each other, probably 100 to 200 yards apace.
And moving quickly?
And moving very quickly, very quickly.
And solid light?
Yes.
A solid,
translucent, glimmering. Going into describing, that goes into describing any number of UFO type settings, because one of the commonalities that I've seen, they don't make sense in perceptual space. Something about them feels like it's here and not here at the same time. That's the closest I can get to describing an encounter with these things.
Do you think it was a live, living organism?
I've wondered that as well. I actually think that many of the craft themselves may actually be living organisms, much like we ride horses. I'm thinking that these craft may be highly evolved living ecosystems within themselves. Yeah,
yep, I'm beginning to think so too. And they maneuver like they're incredible the way they can maneuver. The one that frightened me the most, and of course I would not want this to happen to me, was this little family was out on the south shore of Long Island in their backyard having a nice little swim in their pool at night, and this big orb flew right over them in the pool and just stopped and hovered over them. And they did not know if they were going to live to see another day. They didn't know if this thing was going to swallow them, suck them up from the pool, come down and land in the backyard, or what. And what it did was they had a staring contest, and they felt it was a plasma-like, almost living thing. And this thing just sort of watched them and just hovered over the swimming pool. And they stood frozen in a group. There were 4 of them looking up at this thing, afraid to climb out, afraid to do anything, just sat under it. And then it just took off, shot off and left. So, I don't know what's going on, but we have to discuss it.
Yeah. There's some big stuff on the horizon. Those of you who continue to kind of travel with us here, stay on the websites, offplanetradio.com and offplanetradio.net. I've got a show that will be released. It'll be prior to this show with Kristen Ann, who's been on the show before, and she's talking about this Grand Cardinal Crossing that's coming up beginning April 15th. And this is a conjunction of planets that's rather unique, and I think we are going to be heading into summer with things happening in the sky and as above, but so below. And so that's coming up on Off Planet Radio. And then over the weekend, I'm going to be interviewing 2 gentlemen, Agent K and Agent D from the Object Report, and we're going to go into the subject of hybrids. And these are 2 gentlemen that have a background in medical anatomy illustration and have done extensive work studying not just abductions and craft, but hybridization projects. So all of these things are coming up in a very short term. We're going to stay busy. We'll give you information. At the same time, we may occasionally fade away for a while to go do some writing and get some other projects done. Anything else, Chris?
No, except I'm really looking forward to both of those shows. And are we not going into the new era of Aquarius? Is
Yes.
that what's happening?
That's essentially what the Cardinal Crossing is perceived as. It's actually a sequence. We've actually been in this process. Most people seem to think even before the December 21st, 2012. But we're heading into the heart of the beast now.
I hope. Is it a positive, or should we hold on?
Well, it's a mixed blessing. You'll hear the show just like everybody else. That's going to be online by the time anybody hears this show.
Oh, great.
We'll keep you posted.
I'm very anxious.
Excellent. That's going to wrap it up for this time. This is the Off Planet Radio Report. I'm Randy Maugans, and with my dear friend and co-host Chris Hawley, we bid you good night. Keep looking at the skies and stay close to the truth that's inside you.
Good night, everyone.
This is Off Planet Radio.
Watch the ceiling float away. There's no gravity today. The way you love me, I could stay. You close your eyes and I get scared. I'm not sure what, when, or where. We'll set it down when we land again. We're planning on tonight. It's hard to find you. We're planning on today. I never felt so far away. Take me to your favorite club to drink that drink from a silver cup. Music plays and it swallows us up. You take my hand and you pull me in. It's nice and safe inside your skin. It's hard to tell me when I begin. We're planning on tonight. It's hard to find you. We're planning on today. I never felt so far away. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. you love me? What planet are we on today? I never felt so far away. What planet are we on tonight? It's hard to find you. What planet are we on today? I never felt so far away. What planet are we on tonight? It's hard to find you. What planet are we on today? I never felt so far away. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. What planet are we on? I never felt so far away. What planet are we on? I never felt so far away. What planet are we on? What planet are we on? I never felt so far away. Will you love me?